I think the Los Angeles Rams are sneaky Super Bowl contenders. We'll talk about why on today's edition of Locked On NFL.
The new Locked On NFL. The madman Tyler Rowland is your double shot of NFL espresso with the Locked On local experts on every major story. Get ready. Rowland is revving up. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Football fans, welcome in to the Locked On NFL podcast, bringing you a double dose of the NFL's biggest stories with help from our local experts that know your favorite teams like no one else. I am your host, the madman, Tyler Rowland, joined today as I am every Thursday by Locked On NFL expert, the data queen, Michelle Majuk. On today's episode, we're going to talk about some big-time matchups in Week 15, the Eagles and the Steelers, the Bills and Lions, but we are going to start with an NFC West matchup that I think includes a Super Bowl contender, and it's not the one you thought it would be at the beginning of the year. Before we dive into it, though, do want to thank you for making Locked On NFL your first listen and for being an everydayer here with us at the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. It's Crossover Thursday here on the Locked On Podcast Network, and Crossover Thursday is always presented by Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app. Use the code Locked On NFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. That's right, Michelle. I think the Los Angeles Rams are sneaky Super Bowl contenders.
Yeah, and I don't think you're going to be saying that when the 49ers beat them tonight. Like,
Woo!
Relax. I know they beat the Bills. It was a very good game. And Matthew Stafford is stupid good in December. I'll give him that, right? At least he has been with the Rams. But the 49ers are in desperation mode. I guess technically they both are. But when they played earlier in the year, the 49ers usually have the Rams number, right?
True.
They play earlier in the year. The Rams came back from 13-point deficit with 7 minutes to go. In that game, the 49ers had more total yards, rushing yards, passing yards, first down. It had more time of possession than that game. Somehow they still lost. But I do think even with 49ers injuries, they're still the better overall team.
Well, they'll have to prove it. And I can tell you, though, that my guys over at Locked On Rams, they seem pretty excited about where this team's going.
It was a tremendous win. Their offense looked like the Rams offense that we've been waiting to see, dare I say, for a couple of years. Like that was an unbelievable performance by Matthew Stafford, an unbelievable performance by Puka Nacua. And I'm sure we'll get to the offensive line at some point. I thought that was their best performance of the entire season. But you said it. I think this gives the Rams and Rams fans in particular, Locked On Rams fans, some hope going into the last 4 games of this season, because you did see them beat a really, really good team. And they beat a good team not because the other team laid an egg, but because you played a little bit better than they did. It was a great win for them, a confidence builder. And, now they got a short week to go up to San Francisco and try to really build some momentum because they're finally on the right side of 500.
So I'll just lay it out. I kind of talked about it on yesterday's show a little bit, or a couple days ago, looking at who are some dark horse Super Bowl contenders. And my pick was the Los Angeles Rams. And look, right now, they're not even in the playoffs. So I get it. That's why they call me the madman, right? A little crazy. But with the way that offense can play, the offensive line getting healthier, the defensive line, I'm a big pass rush believer. That is my football philosophy. I believe that pass rush is as important as quarterback play. It is the great equalizer. It doesn't matter what you got in the secondary. If you got a great pass rush, you can make it work. And I look at the Rams pass rush, and I think that I can count on them to get some pressure. It wasn't a great performance against the Bills, admittedly so, but you don't play the Bills offensive line every week. But with the defensive line being what they can be, the offense humming, and then just the reliability of Sean McVay as a coach. You're right that the 49ers outplayed the Rams in that first game, even though the Rams won. But this version of the Rams right now, today, is a far better version than the version that played in that game. So I think the Rams win this game, and I think the Rams actually make it to the playoffs over the Seattle Seahawks. I think the Rams could be in the Final Four in the NFC.
Listen, the Rams are 10-1 in December games since trading for Stafford, right? Their only loss came against the Ravens last year in overtime. And the Ravens were amazing last year, right? So I get what you're saying. I also like if your favorite team had to face one of these teams to make the playoffs, right? To make the playoffs, would you rather go to play at San Francisco or at LA? Say the Titans, your favorite team, has to go play one of those guys. They have to win. Who would you rather face?
Right now, I'd rather play the 49ers. They're so banged up. And that's the thing. Like, will Trent Williams play in this game?
Probably
Deebo
not.
Samuel is having, like, I'm watching Locked On 49ers.
Deebo is pointless. He doesn't matter. He does nothing.
Well, hey, they're talking about him maybe retiring. As a matter of fact, let's hear from the guys over at Locked On 49ers. They got some concerns.
I think one thing that you really have to do is force Matthew Stafford to turn the ball over. We've seen plenty of times against the 49ers where he's prone to do that. This 44-point game that the Rams just put up, he didn't throw any interceptions, right? So like, you want to beat this Rams team, that's the recipe. Get pressure on him. But if you're the 49ers, you want to follow that blueprint. Get pressure on him consistently. Make him throw passes before he wants to. Make him throw passes blind. And Matthew Stafford, he's a gunslinger. He's prone to throw you a couple, and then you got to take advantage of that. But if you're not able to do those things, it'll be a long day for the 49ers defense, especially with Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp. Both of those guys are cooking. They're healthy. They both have well over 100 yards in his last game. Cooper Kupp scored a touchdown. I mean, Puka Nacua with the touchdown that really sealed the game at the end.
So will Nick Bosa play? Because they need him. Because the San Francisco 49ers pass rush has been a major issue all year long. And without Nick Bosa, it's going to be even worse. So if they can't get pressure on Stafford, they can't force those interceptions, and it leads to a Rams win, in my opinion.
Well, why aren't we talking about the Rams defense? We keep talking about the 49ers defense. I mean, are we going to forget the Rams gave up 40 points last week, right?
Against the Bills.
Whoever had the ball last was going to win. That's just what it came down to. The Rams could not stop the Bills either. And yeah, they're amazing, but the Rams defense is nothing to be like, oh, they're amazing. Like Brock Purdy's going to be able to put up points against them. And I don't care about Deebo Samuel. He's done nothing and he looks terrible when the ball, like the only time that the offense struggled last week, the 49ers offense did, is when they put the ball in Deebo's hands. He's so slow. He cannot play anymore. He's done. He's just done. But you got Juwan Jennings, you got George Kittle. I guess the running back might not be on their fifth running back of the season, but they still have weapons. They still have Brock Purdy. They're going to put up points. They still have Kyle Shanahan calling the plays. Like it could be a high scoring game. I just think I trust in the 49ers overall more than the Rams to come through at the end of this game.
Yeah. And it'll be interesting to see who makes the play at the end of the game to win this one, because I do think it's going to be close. I think there will be some points scored. It's a great Thursday night football game, and we're on a bit of a roll with those right now, thankfully. But with that being said, not the only great football game of Week 15 in the NFL. We got some interconference matchups to break down. It's Locked On NFL, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the final month of the NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And it's hard to believe, but we have arrived to the final month of the NFL season. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can open up the FanDuel Sportsbook app, check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same exact page where you place your bets. Make sure that you visit FanDuel.com to join today, or just download the app. You're going to get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. And Ravens money line against the New York Giants this week, I'd say that's a pretty good place to start with your first $5 bet. But make sure that you go to FanDuel.com, never waste a hunch, and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Today's episode is also brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is the best place to buy tickets, period. Why? They have the best features in the industry. And now Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. I've purchased football, basketball, baseball, concert tickets, all on Game Time. And again, it's because they have the best features. Not only do they have Game Time picks, but they also have a panoramic view from your seat that you can see what you're going to be looking at before you sit down. They also have the ability to give you all-in pricing if you just toggle on the feature in the app, so you have no surprise fees at checkout. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. What time is it? It's game time. All right, Michelle, let's continue today's edition of Locked On NFL. We talked about that good Thursday night football game between the Los Angeles Rams and the San Francisco 49ers. It's kind of a loser goes home game. Whoever loses that game, basically they can kiss their playoff hopes like goodbye. It is really what they're going to be looking at. But do want to move forward here. Got a great game this weekend between the Buffalo Bills and the Detroit Lions. And I got to tell you, Michelle, as someone who covers a team that's 3-10, I'm having a hard time rationalizing the panic that is coming from Buffalo Bills fans. And my guy Joe Marino from Locked On Bills is here to remind you guys, maybe just enjoy the season.
The Bills, maybe their best pass rush game of the season came against Kansas City this year. I understand it's been a different story in the playoffs. I've highlighted this every year. The regular season success against Mahomes is off the charts. They can't sniff him in the playoffs. It's widely understood that the defensive line hasn't been good enough in playoff elimination games, and it hasn't been good enough this year. So, yeah, is there a wide open path for that to be the case? Sure. Hope not. Let's play all the games. Let's see what happens. Enjoy it. You're in the good years of being a Bills fan. They got a chance. They got a capacity to do it in a transition year. Let's enjoy it, folks. Maybe they fall short. Maybe the defensive line's not good enough. Maybe they make a big mistake at a crucial moment. But this team just clinched the division with 5 games left to play. There's going to be at least one home playoff game at Highmark Stadium. Enjoy the ride, folks. Please, enjoy the ride.
It's a ride I personally would like to enjoy. I'm, just saying, just looking at that. But at the end of the day, I think the Bills fans are just out of their minds here. That was a great game against the Rams on the road, short week. Like, I just don't think that the Bills losing to the Rams, and even if they lose this game to the Lions, like, it's not going to change what I think the ceiling is for the Bills this year. I still think that they can win the Super Bowl.
I just think the way they lost, it just haunts them, right? It feels like every year the Bills season is ending with Josh Allen on the sideline, hoping to get a chance to go out there. And if he gets that chance, he's going to go out and win the game. Right. But his defense just can't get him on the field. And that's how they lose these games always. It's not that they're losing because, it's a great game. It's always, it just always seems to be that scenario. So I get why they'd be frustrated there, but this Bills team is fantastic. This game should be great. It's going to be really interesting because both of these teams go for a lot on 4th down, and they're both really good at getting 4th downs. So this could come down to who's the ballsiest coach among the group and who can actually convert on those 4th downs. But this could be a wild game.
I mean, if it comes down to that, then you got to give the edge to the Detroit Lions. I mean, Dan Campbell is the man amongst men with NFL coaching. But I will say, on the other side of it, while the Buffalo Bills don't have an elite outside target at this time, Keon Coleman's still a little banged up. I don't think Amari Cooper is that at this stage of where he's at and playing. But there are a lot of teams in the NFC that do have that player, most specifically the Minnesota Vikings with Justin Jefferson. And my guy Matt Derry from Locked On Lions talked about how rookie cornerback Tyrion Arnold has stepped up in recent weeks, is playing great football, and might just be the difference for the Lions this year.
The Lions are going to take the next step and be really good and get to the Super Bowl. You got to have people on the outside taking away the other team's best targets. It's a passing league. It's a league where the offensive players get preferential treatment. You see flags flying all the time for pass interference. And yes, Arnold's been flagged in the past, right? And he'll be flagged again. But I feel better about this team going into their stretch run with Buffalo and Chicago and San Francisco and the 11-2 world-beating Vikings. All right, just ask Byron Murphy. No one's talking about the Vikings. Ooh, Vikings are good. Don't get me wrong. But Terrion Arnold getting a chance to play against Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, I like the Lions' chances because this kid has stuck his nose in there and has made it. He's made it. He's playing good football.
My guy Matt Derry's been taking shots at the Vikings all week, and I've been using the clip every single time. But you also add in, A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith on the Philadelphia side of things. They might have to play them. Are you convinced now, because the Lions have made improvements in their secondary, that won't be an issue for them going down the stretch?
It might not be an issue going down the stretch, and maybe they can get help. I mean, they're dealing with so many injuries right now, but
Crazy.
It's not going to be their defense that wins them, these games. Their offense is going to have to keep up, and they're going to need those home games too, because they're so much better at home. So they better win this game against, normally interconference games don't matter all too much to your seeding, because these are games you can lose, right? Because you're the tiebreaker then goes to the conference wins loss, but the Vikings are right on the Lions' tail. So if they lose to this Bills team, where the Lions defense has had a blitz like crazy since Aiden Hutchinson has gone down to get any pressure, right? But Josh Allen is a beast against the blitz. He has 124 passer rating against the blitz this year. And the Lions are just, like I said, blitzing like crazy. So I do expect Josh Allen to have a great game. And on the other side, I could see Jared Goff struggling against the Bills' heavy zone defense, because he struggles against zone defense. He has 9 touchdowns to 10 interceptions this year against zone coverage. All 10 of his interceptions thrown this year have been against the zone.
Wow, that's going to make it difficult. So I think, kind of to put a button on the Terrion Arnold conversation, I think the blitzing has helped the secondary. I think with a player like Josh Allen that does do well against the blitz, as you pointed out, that's when the cornerbacks of the Lions will really be tested, is when the blitz isn't just getting home and making their job easy. No, the blitz is going to be going. Allen is going to beat it a couple of times. And can you still win in those scenarios? That's what I would be looking at. And you make a good point. The Vikings are right on the Lions' tail. The Vikings play the Lions the last week of the season too. So if they can get to a game where both of them have the same record, the Vikings can absolutely find a way to steal the division. With the way we've talked about the Detroit Lions all year long, you would never believe that could happen, but that is exactly where we could be by the end of the season. But with that being said, there's another interconference matchup, the Keystone Battle between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Philadelphia Eagles. And man, the Eagles have won 9 in a row, but there's always some drama in Philadelphia. It's Locked On NFL, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Built Rewards. If you're a renter, listen up. This is a total game changer. Thanks to Built, B-I-L-T, you can now earn points on rent payments, just like you do with groceries or travel. Paying rent now comes with serious perks, and it's completely free to join. Earn valuable Built points on rent and everyday spending at no extra cost. You can redeem those points for flights, hotel stays, and even future rent payments. With over 500 airlines and 700,000 hotels in their program, the possibilities are endless. I love using points for travel, and Built makes it easy to turn rent into rewards. If you're already paying rent, why not make it work for you? Start earning points on rent you're already paying by going to joinbuilt.com/LockedOnNFL. That's joinbilt.com/LockedOnNFL. And make sure that you use our link so they know that we sent you. Don't wait. Start earning rewards today. All right, Michelle, we're going to cap off today's edition of Locked On NFL. We talked about Thursday night football with the Rams and 49ers. We talked about the Buffalo Bills taking on the Detroit Lions and some aspects in that game. Now we got to move to, again, another great interconference matchup, this time the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Philadelphia Eagles. And I got to start with the Eagles. Michelle, I made the joke to you off air before we started recording here about how I'm going to get these clips for the show, and I see, Bills fans are panicking, and I go to Philadelphia and there's this drama. And, my guy Louis DiBiase is saying it feels like they're coming off a loss, not a win. And I'm just like, oh man, it must be nice to be crying and complaining about your 10-3s and your 11-2s and all of that. While I sit here and cover a 3-10 team on a daily basis. But with my crying out of the way, because I have to get my crying in, let's move to the Eagles, because there's some crying there too. And a guy who I know well, A.J. Brown, who, listen, you talk about diva wide receivers, and A.J. Brown is the perfect example of a guy whose talent is only matched by his cantankerous personality. Now, the reality is, throughout most of NFL history, you want those guys, no matter how much of a diva they are. Terrell Owens, my favorite wide receiver of all time. Classic diva. Randy Moss, straight cash, homie. Classic diva. Even going back to Michael Irvin. You know what I mean? Like, we're talking about diva wide receivers. They're always going to be that way. Guys like Larry Fitzgerald and Calvin Johnson are definitely in the minority here of guys who are non-divas. So I don't mind that A.J. Brown is a diva, but him calling out the quarterback and then Brandon Graham kind of furthering that and pouring gas on that fire on the radio station this week, it has just made bad vibes in Philadelphia. My guy Louis talked about exactly that.
Like, this is how the Eagles operate when things aren't always going perfect. They love to go to the media. They just can't keep things in-house. And two guys I'm talking about, we all know, A.J. Brown, Brandon Graham. Like, when you talk about the context of what these two guys are saying after this win, which feels like a loss at this point, like, is A.J. Brown correct in being frustrated with Jalen Hurts in the passing game and voicing those frustrations to the media after the game? Like, he's correct in what he is saying specifically. 100%. It has not been good enough. The Eagles are currently the 31st ranked passing team for an 11-2 football team that has as much money invested in the passing game and the talent that they have and the track record that this personnel has. It is inexcusable. So what he is saying, correct. He is 100% justified in feeling the way he does.
Even though A.J. Brown is justified in his frustrations, Michelle, do you think this drama can derail the Eagles season?
I don't know. I don't really understand the frustrations here, right? Like, they're winning games. If they weren't winning, I'd understand, but they're on a 9-game winning streak. They have a plus 118 point differential since week 6.
Not good enough.
Not
good enough.
I mean, they're averaging over 28 points per game since week 6. Like, they have Saquon Barkley that they're leaning on, and it has been a little bit too low. The last 2 weeks, Jalen Hurts hasn't even hit 125 passing yards, I don't think. Like, yeah, right. You got to up that a little bit, but it's the middle of the season, or it's a long season. And also, that was a trap game last week, right? Against the Panthers, and they still won. Like, those are trap games that a lot of good teams end up losing, and they still came through and won the game. Just be happy about that. It was a trap game. They were looking for it in the schedule, and they still won.
Well, you're telling A.J. Brown to just be happy, and I have found that it's just not what he likes to do. Being happy isn't in the cards. But I'm with you that they could complain all they want. It's the middle of the season doldrums. I just think this is classic A.J. Brown. He just likes to be frustrated about things. I think they'll be fine. They get into the playoffs. They win one game. And the main goal, which is just winning games by any means necessary, will continue to be the main goal. But this is something I think we put a pin in. And you get into the offseason, if the Eagles do go out and the passing game is just a complete flame out in their playoff loss, A.J. Brown is proven to be the kind of guy who will make noise. And I think we could see some sort of change in Philadelphia if they do go out of the playoffs in the wrong way. But looking at the other side of this, the Steelers, who obviously you know very well, their main target, another guy who is a classic Steelers diva wide receiver, George Pickens, he's not going to play in this game. And there's some conversation in Pittsburgh that, Mike Tomlin may be taking a long view with George Pickens, knowing how important he is to the future of the team. And that's something my guy Chris Carter talked about on Locked On Steelers.
And it appears that Mike Tomlin may be playing it safe with the Steelers. They said that initially it looked like a minor injury on Friday when it happened, and then when they did an MRI afterwards, it turned into it was a lot more significant than what they expected. And so the Steelers had to sit George Pickens in that game, and then they also decided, that he's probably going to sit this week. They'll see how he participates in practice. And with the short week, and you got, of course, this week they play the Eagles in Philadelphia, but that's the start of the 11-day stretch where they're going to play 3 games, and because 6 days after that they're playing the Ravens, and then just a few days after that, 5 days after that, they're playing the Chiefs. So there's a lot of short order things that have to happen for George Pickens. And let's face it, the Steelers cannot afford to go into their biggest games of the season without this guy. And you may be sitting here thinking, well, Chris, isn't that the Eagles, Ravens, and Chiefs? Because that's the gauntlet that everyone's been waiting for, the craziest part of the second half of the schedule. And I'd say, well, no, because the Steelers are virtually a lock for the playoffs right now.
I think he's right. I think the biggest games on the schedule for the Steelers are the playoff games that they know they're going to be playing in. I wouldn't, risk George Pickens long-term for these games just to prove it to who? The media, you know what I mean? I think Tomlin would be right to rest him.
Maybe this week if he can't go. When he's ready to go, he should be out there. I mean, this game is actually not too important. They have a 2-game lead over the Ravens, but that Ravens game is going to be absolutely huge. The Ravens get the Giants this week. You would expect them to win. So that Ravens game, hopefully Pickens is back for that, because, I mean, these top 3 seeds in the AFC are going to be the Chiefs, the Bills, and then whoever wins this AFC North. You really want to go to any of those places if it's the Ravens, Bills, or Chiefs. You want to win this division, obviously. But also last week, Wilson had 158 passing yards, by far a season low. He was averaging 271 passing yards per game in his first 6 starts with George Pickens. So, I mean, the leading wide receiver for the Steelers last week was Scotty Miller. I guess he goes by Scott now because he's a grown man. But 38 receiving yards he had. And that led the Steelers wide receivers. The Steelers defense is going to have to win this game for sure.
Well, they'll have a better chance of doing it if the Eagles' passing offense sucks. So we will see what
Barkley could take over.
Yes, he'll need to. Okay, very interesting to see the fallout with the Eagles if these passing problems continue, especially if they actually lose a game. Like if this is how things are in Philadelphia on a 9-game winning streak, what's it going to be like when they lose a game? That'll be interesting to see. I may be rooting for that just for the chaos and to see how everyone reacts. But with that being said, that is going to do it for today's edition of Locked On NFL. For me, your host, the Madman, Tyler Rowland, my co-host, the Data Queen, Michelle Majuk. Make sure you guys check out the afternoon edition of Locked On NFL with Tony Wiggins in the barbershop. But it is Locked On NFL, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. And as we tell you every single week, stay safe out there.
Bye, y'all.